Guys, welcome to another video. You've got Mr. Everything English. Today we are covering 50 language devices, literary devices, language features, whatever you call them, we are covering 50 of them. What are they? What do they mean? Examples, and how do you use them in writing? Guys, this is the foundation of English. If you don't know these, then you can't analyze anything. Because in English, a core part is, can you analyze language and can you use language? For both of these, you must know language. Now guys, some of them on the board behind me are going to be basic, easy peasy ones. Some of them, when I say them, are going to sound like I'm speaking a different language. But trust me guys, it all comes under language features. So, let's begin. Everything education. Tuition for maths, English and science. Number one, guys, we're going to begin with pathetic fallacy. Pathetic fallacy, don't ask me why somebody called it that, but they did. Guys, pathetic fallacy is when the weather reflects the mood. Easy examples, guys. When it's sunny, people are happy. When it's raining, people are sad. Now, of course, this isn't always the case. But generally, when pathetic fallacy is used as a language feature in writing, is when the weather reflects the mood. In Macbeth, thunder, lightning, rain, and then we meet the witches. The weather is dark and evil. The characters are dark and evil. Pathetic fallacy, I repeat guys, is when the weather reflects the mood. Number two, guys, personification. Easy peasy, do not get this one wrong. Personification, guys, is when you give something that is non-human a human feature. For example, this pen was laying on my hand. This board was standing behind me. These are all human features, standing and laying. I repeat guys, it's when you give a non-human a human feature. Number three, guys, zoomorphism. The answer is in the name. What do you find in a zoo? You find animals. Guys, zoomorphism is when you give a human an animal's feature. So for example, if somebody was shouting at me and I said, please stop barking at me. Barking is an animal feature and I'm applying it to a human. So guys, zoomorphism is when you give a human the features of an animal. Number four, guys, chromomorphism. Now this one sounds super complicated, but essentially guys, chromomorphism is the opposite of personification. So we said that personification is when you give a non-human a human feature. Chromomorphism is when you give a human the feature of a non-human. So for example, if I said John was blasting around the room like a rocket, he couldn't be stopped. Yes, it's a simile, but it's also chromomorphism because I'm giving John the features of a rocket. Guys, number five, this one here, everyone thinks they know it, but they keep getting it wrong. What's a simile? Sir, it's when you describe. No, my friend, it's not when you describe. Always think of a simile as comparing. A simile, guys, is when you compare. But don't say a simile is when you compare two things. Because a thing, what is a thing? Guys, a simile is when you compare two nouns using like or as. When you compare two nouns using like or as. What's the most famous simile in the world? John ran like a cheetah. You're comparing John to a cheetah. Noun, noun, and then you put like or as in between. Guys, metaphor. Metaphor is when you compare two nouns without like or as. When you compare two nouns without like or as. An easy way of doing a metaphor is by saying the first noun is the second noun. For example, John is a cheetah. Not John is like a cheetah, but I've removed the like. Remember guys, a metaphor is comparing two nouns without like or as. So you remove the like and the as. An easy way is put in the word is. So John is a cheetah. Let's keep with the same character John, guys. John is a devil. John is a giant. All these are examples of metaphors. Guys, number seven, extended metaphor. Easy peasy, it's when you explain the metaphor. It's a long metaphor. If you're using it in writing, try to make it last for about 3-4 lines. But it's when you explain the metaphor. So for example, if I said, John is a giant, I had never seen anyone this big in my entire life. He stood a humongous 8'5", and his shoulders were spreading the width of the doorframe. The moment you start explaining the metaphor, you've now extended the metaphor. This is a higher level device than this, but it's very easy to do. All you do, guys, is you explain the metaphor. Number 8, guys. Number 8. Oxymoron. Two opposite words. But I'm going to give you guys a nice, easy trick of how to use an oxymoron. A commonly used oxymoron, guys, is sweet and sour, black, white, fat, skinny. But these are terrible oxymorons. Why are they terrible oxymorons? Because they don't teach you how to use them. They don't help you learn how to use an oxymoron. Guys, the easiest way, and I'll do it over here, guys. The easiest way of creating an oxymoron is in 3 steps. Number 1, you think of a basic adjective. So for example, the word slow is an adjective. Then you think of the opposite of slow. What's the opposite of slow? The opposite of slow is fast. Guys, the opposite of slow is fast. Then you think about a noun. You think of a noun that is really, really fast. So what is really, really fast? You might use the noun cheetah. And all you do, guys, is you bring these 2 words together and there is your oxymoron. There is your 2 opposing words. You have slow, cheetah on the board. Well, it kind of came off the board, but look. This word here, guys, and this word here. You bring them together. So a good oxymoron is when you have an adjective plus a noun. It's when you have an adjective plus a noun. Let's create one again. Let's do small. If small was my first adjective, what's the opposite of small? The opposite of small is big. What is really, really big? A giant. And all you do is you put the adjective small and the noun giant together and you have the oxymoron small giant. Guys, I apologize. I've got a lot of stuff on the board, hence it's cutting off. But that is how you create your oxymoron. Keep it very simple, guys. Use basic adjectives. Think of your first adjective. Big, small, angry, happy, ugly, beautiful. That's your first adjective. Then you think of the opposite. What's the opposite of small? Fast. What's the opposite of ugly? Beautiful. Then think of a noun. So what is really beautiful? Maybe a princess. The ugly princess, you put the words together and you've created your oxymoron. Guys, oxymoron is one of those devices that I feel has been complicated massively over the years. Let's make it easier. Let's not make it difficult. Oxymoron, guys, is 2 opposite words, but don't do noun, noun, or adjective, adjective. Do adjective plus noun. Ugly princess. Small giant. Slow cheetah. Adjective, noun. Adjective, noun. Adjective, noun. And that way, guys, you will always get it correct in your exam. Then, number 9, juxtaposition. Another language device that has been overcomplicated. What essentially is juxtaposition? Juxtaposition, guys, is 2 opposing ideas. So this one, guys, this one is 2 opposite words. This one is 2 opposing ideas. For example, a couple of years ago, we were all wearing face masks, and we were all locked down in our house. Looking back, that's juxtaposition. That was a strange time. That wasn't normal. How do you create juxtaposition? Easy peasy, guys. Always remember, the easy way to explain juxtaposition is explain the oxymoron. And you want to make it last for about 3-4 lines. So for example, if I said, in Tesco's, I saw a small giant. That's my oxymoron. The small giant was tiptoeing, trying to reach the top shelf. But no matter how much he stretched, no matter how much he tiptoed, no matter how hard he tried, this small giant just couldn't reach the jam jar. I've gone from 2 opposite words to juxtaposition, 2 opposite ideas. And what did I do, guys? I simply explained the oxymoron. Nice and easy. Let's not overcomplicate devices just because we want to sound clever. Let's be easy and useful in our exams. Guys, number 10, semantic field. Guys, number 10, semantic field. This is when words can be linked to one topic. I repeat, guys, it's when words across a paragraph can be linked to one topic. So, for example, if the writer, you want to create like a scary, spooky atmosphere, you might use the word eerie in the first line. You might use the word ghastly in the second line. You might use the word spooky in the third line. When you put these words together, they create a semantic field of fear. Let's go for easier examples. Goal, referee, offside. These words link to the semantic field of football. Punch, kick, takedown. These words link to the semantic field of MMA. Semantic field, guys, is when you use words across a text to link to one topic. Semantic field is a lovely language device to use to create a certain atmosphere, whether it be positive or negative. Guys, rhetorical question. This is like 1 + 1 = 2 in maths. It's the basic, easy peasy language device. Rhetorical question, guys, is when a question is asked in a piece of writing and that question does not require a response. Hyperbole, the answer is in the name. This is the most common language device to ever exist. Hyper. Hyper. Hyper, hyper, hyper. When you are hyper, you are over the top. When you are hyper, you are over exaggerating. And this is what a hyperbole is. A hyperbole is when everything you say is over the top. But make sure you're actually over the top. So don't say, oh, today I'm so tired. That's not really a hyperbole. Today I'm so tired. I've been awake all day. I haven't slept for 2 weeks. I haven't eaten since 3 years ago. Okay, now this is a bit too much. But you get my drift, guys. Be dramatic. Be exaggerated. Be over the top. Hype the hyperbole up. Assonance, guys. Assonance is when you repeat the vowel sound. A-E-I-O-U. I was lighting the fire. I. I was too cool for school. O. It's when you repeat the vowel sound. Next one, guys, alliteration. You should have hopefully learnt this when you were in year 5. Alliteration, guys, is when words in a row begin with the same letter. The big blue ball bounced by the beach. B. Peter Piper picked a pepper, something. It's when words in a row begin with the same letter. Can you have words in between? Yeah, maybe 1 or 2. Don't do a whole sentence in between. But maybe the word and or the word but, you can put them in between. But don't just go crazy and start putting whole phrases in between. Number 16, guys, sibilance. I like sibilance. Guys, sibilance is when you repeat the S letter or the S sound. So it's basically that, but with the letter S. So for example, the snake slithered and, I don't know, the snake slowly slithered through the sand. S. Guys, number 17, emotive language. Emotive language, guys, is when the writing specifically is trying to invoke a particular emotion, trying to make you feel angry, trying to make you feel sad, trying to make you feel sorry for the characters. This is emotive language. When you use language to try to create a particular emotion in the reader. Guys, onomatopoeia is when you use sounds in writing. Bang, boom, creak, zoom. These are all examples of onomatopoeia. It's when you use sounds in your writing. That's it. Like, don't overcomplicate these. Rule of 3 is when you have 3 adjectives or 3 phrases in a row to describe one thing. This jumper is black, has full sleeves, and has a red logo on the chest. That's it. It's when you have 3 words or phrases to describe one thing. Thunder, lightning, rain is an example of rule of 3. What's next? Imagery. Guys, imagery is when the writer purposely tries to create a particular image in the writer's mind. They normally do this through a lot of detail, through a lot of description, and this allows the reader to really picture what's been happening in the text. Guys, repetition. Repetition is when you repeat words or phrases for a particular effect. Repetition as a language device normally happens quite close together. So you talk about what's being repeated. If I said stop, 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 that's talking about how the word stop is being repeated in a very close proximity. And then we have 4 easy peasy ones. And I don't normally put them on the language device list, but I put them there because you can analyze them. In English language, English literature, we can analyze nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs. What's a noun, guys? A noun is the name of anything. Yes, there's types of nouns, but we're not going to go to the different types of nouns. That's a whole video in itself. But when you think of nouns, just think of the name of something. Table, door, car, just the name of something. Guys, verbs, think of an action, something that you do. Jump, talk, teach, eat. These are all actions, and this is what you call a verb. Guys, an adjective describes a noun. For example, a pen is a noun because it's the name of an object. The pen is red. Red is describing the pen, so red is the adjective. And an adverb, guys, an adverb describes the verb. An adverb describes the verb. He was eating his food slowly. Eating is the verb. Slowly describes how I was eating. So slowly is the adverb. Eating is the verb. Alright guys, colloquial language. How you doing, bruv? Oh, that sounds so corny. But guys, colloquial language. This, I always say it, guys, this is when you write the way you speak. This is when you write the way you speak. So you might wanna have a bit of slang in your writing. Don't go crazy. Or you might want to speak with a certain dialect. But colloquial language is used to write the way you speak. It's best used in speech. So if you're doing a story and your character is maybe talking to somebody else, to reflect where the other person's from, they may speak in a certain way. And that's reflected in your writing. Alright guys, euphemism. Euphemism, again, let's not overcomplicate it. Euphemism, guys, is a nicer way of saying bad stuff. I repeat, guys, it's a nicer way of saying bad stuff. So for example, let's go straight for it. When somebody dies, we don't say, sorry mate, your mum's dead. We'll say, she's no longer with us. She's passed away to a better place. These are euphemisms. If somebody's going to get sacked from their job, you might say, you're fired. No, you don't do that. You might say, I'm sorry, but I have to let you go. A euphemism, guys, is a nicer way of saying a bad thing. Just think of that. Next one is hyperphora. Now guys, hyperphora is almost the cousin of a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is when the character asks a question, but it doesn't require an answer. Guys, hyperphora is when the character asks a question and then they answer their own question. That is hyperphora. When they ask and they answer their own question. The inspector in an inspector calls does that a lot. Guys, satire. Satire is when you use humor. But what do you use it for? You use humor to expose the problems in people or the problems in society. Guys, symbolism. Symbolism is when objects or things have a wider meaning. So for example, can you guys see? Maybe you can. This logo on my chest. I hope as time goes on, people associate this logo with me. That's symbolism. When you're driving in the car and you see the M in the sky, what does that M mean? McDonald's. Everyone's heart just goes crazy because no matter where you are, we all recognize the M. The M is a symbol of McDonald's. In Romeo and Juliet, the balcony, let's now become more Englishy. The balcony is a symbol of power. Juliet at the top, Romeo at the bottom, The balcony is what allows and what acts as a symbol of that power. In Macbeth, when Macbeth sees the dagger is a symbol of what he's about to do and the shame he feels. In an inspector calls, the inspector calls carries a photograph around. This is a symbol of the crime that's been committed. Guys, symbolism is when objects have wider meanings. An anecdote, guys. An anecdote is a small personal story. For example, let's say paper 2, question 5, you're doing a speech about bullying. You might say, when I was in year 7, I was bullied for my uniform. It's an anecdote. It's a small personal story. All right, guys, anaphora. Anaphora is when the writer repeats the same thing at the beginning of a sentence. That's it. It's when the writer repeats the same thing at the beginning of a sentence. And then you have the opposite, an epistrophe. An epistrophe, guys, all it is the reverse. So anaphora is when you repeat the same word at the beginning of a sentence. Epistrophe is when you repeat the word at the end of a sentence. Mesis. What is mesis? This is when you insert a word inside of another word. For example, abso-blooming-lutely. Absolutely, you put the word blooming in between. This is what this is, guys. It's when you insert a word inside of another word. Guys, a cliche is words or phrases that are used quite often. These are phrases that we use a lot. Guys, a paradox is similar to juxtaposition. So juxtaposition and a paradox are two opposing ideas. But a paradox is when the idea is opposite, is strange, but when you think about it, it starts to make a little bit of sense. For example, you might look at an inspector calls, and at the beginning, when the inspector arrives, it's strange, it's juxtaposition. What's this guy saying? But the more Sheila listens to what he says, the more Sheila listens to what's going on, she begins to think, you know what, maybe he's right. Maybe he's got a point. And this is a paradox. Guys, an imperative is a command. Sit down, get up, go over there. This is an imperative. Guys, diction. This is when the writer writes in a specific voice, in a specific way to establish a voice. So for example, the witches in Macbeth, they speak in a very, very particular way. The way they speak is different to all the other characters because Shakespeare uses diction to establish their voice, establish the kind of characters these women are. Guys, plosive is the repetition of sounds like p, so the p sound, p, or t. And then you have cacophony, guys. This is the repetition or the use of any other harsh sound. So it's when the writer repeats harsh sounds throughout their writing. Number 41, and this is anastrophe. Now, what is anastrophe? When you think of anastrophe, think of Borat, if you've ever seen Borat. Guys, anastrophe is when the order of the words is incorrect. So, for example, a correct way is, I like cats. Anastrophe is when the writer might say, I cats like. So it's when you mess up or is when the order of the words is not correct. This is used a lot in speech or to show confusion in the characters. Guys, humor is humor, very, very hard to do, but humor is when the writer is funny, is when the writer is funny in writing. Did I do sensory writing? Number 11. Guys, if I didn't, sensory writing is when the writer uses your senses, what you see, what you hear, what you touch, and so on, and they use that as description in writing. All right, guys, where were we? Anachronism. Guys, this is the time machine of language. This is the time machine of language. This is when, so you can argue Inspector Calls is this. Guys, you can argue, anachronism is when the things that are happening in the text, some small signs don't match the time period. So for example, imagine you're writing a story and the story is set in 1955, but your character is using an iPhone. This is anachronism. Because the time machine of English, because the time of the story doesn't match what the character has. This is anachronism, guys. It's when the time that writing is set doesn't fit with something that's happening in the story. Where am I, guys? We have aporia. Aporia is when the speaker expresses doubt in their writing. Number 45, guys, we have hubris. Now, this is when a character is overly confident. They're a little bit arrogant. And then we have 46, 47, and 48. I've divided irony into 3 different ones. Guys, verbal irony is when the opposite of what the character says ends up happening. Structural irony is when events in the text that end up happening go against what the character thought would happen. So verbal is what they say. Structural is an actual event. And then dramatic irony, guys, is specific to plays. And this is when the audience are aware of things that characters on the stage are not aware of. So for example, guys, dramatic irony is when in Macbeth, the audience is aware that Macbeth has killed the king, but the characters on stage are not. Guys, then we have superlative. This is the highest or the most of something. Today is the most special day of my life. He was the bravest man that I know. It's when in writing you want to express the highest amount. Either use the word most or use est at the end of a word. Lastly, guys, number 50, we have motif. And motif, guys, is when the writer keeps on reoccurring a certain image throughout a text. Now, guys, there's 50 devices on the board. Do you need to know all 50? No, that's too much. But this would be my advice. Learn a good chunk of them. Language devices are for 2 reasons. Number 1, how we use them. So you will be assessed on how you use them in your writing. Can you use a simile? Can you use colloquial language? Can you use an imperative? How do you use them in your writing? And the second skill is how do you analyze them? But to analyze them, you have to pick them. So you might read a paragraph, and in the paragraph, can you pick a simile? Can you pick colloquial language? Can you pick an imperative? But before you can use them and before you can analyze them, you have to know them. So guys, my advice would be spend a good chunk of time really learning and watching this video and understanding what these devices mean. My advice would be out of these 50, maybe pick 15. Those 15 are what you are going to make your best friend. Learn those 15 inside out. Be confident in using them and be confident in picking them. Once you've learned those 15, come back to the video and pick 5 more and do it again. And keep doing that until you've learned a good amount. All right, cool. Guys, 50 language devices done and dusted. As always, it's been Mr. Everything English.